George Martin is considered one of the greatest producers of all time. Critics claim him to be the fifth Beatle. Why is this? Martin was the man calling the shots and arranged all the Beatles records. The Beatles are considered the most successful band of all time. George Martin had 30 number one records in the UK and 23 number one records in the US during his time as a producer. As a kid, Martin got a piano at the age of 6. By the age of 8, he begged his mom to take up piano lessons. Although they were not successful because of a dispute between his mother and the teacher, Martin taught himself the instrument. His love for music grew throughout his schooling. He says a performance from the BBC Symphony changed his outlook when he was amazed by the unified, beautiful sound made by 90 people when they played a variety of instruments together. After school, Martin joined the Royal Navy in the Fleet Air Arm as a pilot observer. He never saw battle before leaving the Navy. Later, when Martin and McCartney sat down to talk for a documentary on Martin's success, McCartney pointed out that the job of the observer is the exact same role as the music producer. The observer is the most important role in the plane even though he never operated it. He was the one calling the shots. After leaving the Royal Navy, Martin got a job with EMI where he started producing symphonies and comedic records. In 1962, the Beatles' manager, Brian Epstein, contacted Martin to ask if he would be interested in working with the band. Martin was unsure how he felt about producing for a pop and rock and roll band because it was not his typical line of work. After hearing a demo, Martin wasn't too impressed, but he did like the vocals of Lennon and McCartney.
Said these words to my girl.
On June 6, 1962, the Beatles auditioned for George Martin at Abbey Road Studios. Martin wasn't present for the session, but came in to hear the final product. He didn't think their original material was the greatest, but he was warmed by their wit and comfort in the studio, and signed a contract with them agreeing to the Beatles getting a cent off every record sold. In November 1962, Martin told the Beatles they recorded their first number one hit with Please Please Me. For the Please Please Me album, Martin was considered the arranger and producer. He played piano on a few tracks and also scored the orchestra for songs like Yesterday and Eleanor Rigby.
Look at all the lovely people. Look at all the lovely people.
Most of the songs the Beatles recorded were usually arranged on the spot prior to the recording. As the Beatles started to become more comfortable with the process, Martin told the band to step out of their zone and start experimenting more. From this point forward, Martin started to take less control of their music. This allowed the band to start to develop their own sound and move away from their standard rock music with records like Revolver, Yellow Submarine, and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Aside from the Beatles, Martin has produced, composed, and arranged for other artists and films. He is known for his work with the UK's Gary and the Pacemakers, who have plenty in common with the Beatles, and other artists he has worked with include Elton John, Kenny Rogers, Stevie Wonder, and Michael Jackson. He produced and arranged the two most well-known themes from the James Bond films, including Goldfinger and Live and Let Die. George Martin has 6 Grammys, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the World Soundtrack Academy, 2 Brit Awards for Best British Producer in 1977, and Outstanding Contribution to Music in 1984. Though George Martin doesn't like to be considered the fifth Beatle, it's obvious he was, and though he didn't ever take complete control of any of their projects, it was his guidance that allowed the band to get the most influential name in all of music. There is not one person in the US who hasn't heard some of his work. He has left one of the biggest fingerprints on music, which is what makes it safe to say he is the greatest producer of all time.